Good to see you, Governor.
Where am I, over here?
Right over here.
Tonight on Let It Rip.
Do you regret the decisions you made when it comes to nursing homes and COVID?
So I think it's important to correct the record. My opponent continues to tell people that nursing homes were forced to take COVID patients. They were not. They never were. Governor
Whitmer one-on-one talking about the nursing home deaths during COVID, kids being kept out of school, and the push to get more people into electric cars.
A123 was a company 10 years ago that opened up shop, got a lot of government money, and then folded. People are concerned about that now too, not just Tudor Dixon, but many people who we've talked to who are viewers.
So I think it's important to recognize that as we work with these employers, we've got expectations, and they've got to meet those expectations.
We gave Republican Tudor Dixon and Governor Whitmer the chance to spend about 25 minutes with us talking about the issues that matter to you. Governor Whitmer's camp was able to carve out 16 minutes. We begin with abortion. Many on the right have pointed their fingers at the left, claiming that the governor supports abortion up until birth without restrictions. Whitmer vehemently defending her record on this consequential election issue.
That kind of rhetoric is just not based on any sort of reality. What we know is that Roe v. Wade has restrictions. It's based on viability. That's exactly what this ballot initiative also does. Very rarely there's an extenuating circumstance where a woman is pregnant with a desperately wanted baby. They've decorated a nursery. They've picked out names. And for some reason at the end of the pregnancy, it is fatal for the baby. The baby's not going to survive. Hydrocephalus, for instance, water on the brain. It requires surgical removal of a baby that is not viable. That happens in the very, very rare circumstance, but often at the end of a pregnancy. And that's why it's important for that woman and her family and doctor to be able to have the tools necessary to remove a fetus that's not viable, even if it's that late. But there's not a situation where there are lots of procedures happening at that point in a pregnancy that is being used to inflame and upset and drive fear into people. And it is really the very rare and horribly heartbreaking circumstance that something like that might ever be necessary. And that's why, I think it's really important to remember 70% of abortions happen in, I think, like the first 12 weeks. I mean, that is, and then a few beyond that, but I mean, it's very rare.
Are those your restrictions in your mind?
Roe v. Wade has restrictions, and this ballot initiative does too. It's based on viability, and after viability, yes, there are restrictions. Parental consent also will remain intact. I think that all of this fear-mongering is to defeat a ballot initiative as opposed to really educate the public, and I fear that it's dangerous, and it's important that people get the facts.
Let's talk a moment about the nursing home situation, because it keeps coming up from when COVID happened, and you were in a situation where you made decisions based on the best knowledge that you had. Do you regret the decisions you made when it comes to nursing homes and COVID?
So I think it's important to correct the record. My opponent continues to tell people that nursing homes were forced to take COVID patients. They were not. They never were. There's been audited many times, including by the Republican-appointed Office of Auditor General, that the stakeholder group, AARP, so many different organizations have weighed in to clear up the record. But I know that my opponent knows that this gets people unhappy and distracts them from her dangerous plans, and that's why she continues to promulgate this.
But there were patients that were released into nursing homes.
There were nursing homes that took some of their residents back. That was not mandated by the state. If that was the case, there were strict regulations to try to separate and keep them from infecting other nursing home residents, but that was never something that was required by the state.
But that didn't work necessarily. Do you think there should have been a better plan, perhaps even from the state, to figure out a way to make things work better so that people didn't die?
I think as you look at studies, our policies saved thousands of lives. And as soon as vaccines were available, I deployed the Michigan National Guard to make vaccines, to help vaccinate our nursing home residents. And after that happened, we saw nursing home cases plummet. So the fact of the matter is we saved thousands of lives with our policies. Had my opponent been governor, and she was spreading conspiracy theories saying that vaccines carried the mark of the beast, She said that they had trackers in them. And this is the kind of conspiracy stuff that we're hearing from this person who wants to be governor of the state. If she'd been governor during COVID, thousands more Michiganders would have died.
When you take a look at the governors across the states that you talk to, you said you always were in touch with these governors. You would chat with them and ask them questions. Did you happen to talk to other governors about the nursing home situation? And did you talk to Cuomo about it at any point?
I never talked. I mean, didn't have a relationship with him, but I did have a very good working relationship with Mike DeWine, my counterpart in Ohio, and Eric Holcomb from Indiana, both Republican. My counterparts in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and Kentucky. This was the group that we were regularly helping one another and navigating, and made very similar decisions as we were trying to navigate our states through COVID and save lives. Yeah.
Electric cars. There are many people who are fearful that they're going to be forced into buying an electric car. They feel as though the government, specifically Democrats, both in Washington and here in Michigan, are forcing this issue on them, and they don't want to move that quick. They believe that some of these plants, for instance, the Goshen plant, which is a Chinese company, is being subsidized and being given grants by the government to help kind of do an experiment. Do you think this is an experiment? Do you think it's really going to work?
I think that is just absolutely unfounded kind of crazy talk, to be honest. We are in a global competition. We either win this decade or we're left behind for a generation. This Goshen investment in Big Rapids, the people of Mecosta County are so thrilled about it, from the barbers to the superintendent to the leadership at Ferris University. This is going to be a huge opportunity, yes, for Michigan to make sure that we're leading in batteries and advancements, but also for Mecosta County, that is going to have this influx of high-paying, great jobs, building the future of manufacturing. This is a great thing for the state of Michigan. I know that my opponent doesn't believe in any economic incentives. That would be a huge setback for Michigan. It means the General Motors $7 billion investment in batteries would not happen if she had been governor, because she doesn't support any economic development. She wants to unilaterally disarm. I want to make sure we're winning. We're moving fast, we're competing, and we are winning now, and we can't afford to go back.
You think we're moving too quickly because A123 was a company 10 years ago that opened up shop, got a lot of government money, and then folded. People are concerned about that now, too, not just Tudor Dixon, but many people who we've talked to who are viewers.
So I think it's important to recognize that as we work with these employers, we've got expectations, and they've got to meet those expectations in order to qualify for the resources. And so there are built-in measurements and incentives along the way. A company is not going to get taxpayer incentives if they don't make the investment, the commitment, the jobs. That's what this is about. Michigan is in a competition with the rest of the world. We have to move fast. We have to win. If we're going to continue to lead in advanced manufacturing, which we are right now, we got to put our foot on the accelerator, not go backwards.
Let's talk for a moment about Lieutenant Governor and the comments that were mentioned during the debate. You've talked a little bit about Tudor Dixon being an election denier. I asked her when we sat down together, and she said that as long as an election is certified, she accepts the results. So Joe Biden is the president, she said.
Oh, she said that
finally. She did.
Oh, okay.
She did, though,
Good.
mention the Lieutenant Governor, specifically talking about an article in which he was quoted during the Michigan Chronicle article, where he talked about his concern about election integrity and how this is the reason why Detroiters don't trust elections. Those comments aren't fading away. They're being brought back up. Does that concern you at all? And do you believe that there may be some truth to that in terms of election integrity still?
In an election from 6 years ago, he asked for a recount. He got the recount. He abides by the outcome of it. I mean, there's a difference between asking for a recount, making sure that, you know, that all the ballots add up to the way that they appear to. Sometimes those recounts show a little bit of a change. There was none. He accepts the result of it. That's very different than continuing for years denying an outcome of an election. I'm glad to hear that she's finally accepted that Joe Biden's the president. Did she also say she will accept the will of the voters on November 8th? Because that's another thing she's not yet done, to my knowledge.
Let's talk for a moment about the gas tax. You chose not to pause that gas tax and instead asked the Biden administration to go ahead with that federal gas tax holiday. Do you regret that? Do you think we could have done better with a state gas tax being paused?
feel like I got to correct you again, Rube. So the bill that I vetoed did not go into effect until 2023. The people of Michigan want relief. I want to give them relief. I don't have any time for a legislature that's going to lie to the people and tell them, here, we gave you a tax break, knowing that it full well wouldn't go into effect for 10 months. People in Michigan don't have time for those games, and frankly, I don't either. I'll work with anyone who wants to pause the sales tax on gas right now. We could get it done. I'd sign it. If they wanted to triple the earned income tax credit, I'd sign it. If they want to repeal the retirement tax, that's something I've been trying to get done for 4 years. The biggest hurdle is the Republican legislature.
They're the ones standing in the way.
Absolutely. They could send those to my desk. I'd have signed them already. But what they've done is try to perpetrate a fraud on the public and say, we just saved you some gas tax money, knowing full well it doesn't go into effect until spring of 2023. That's baloney.
Well, that's why we're talking to you, so you can clear the record.
Next, the governor on the record about the kids being pulled from school during COVID. Welcome back to this special edition of Let It Rip, one-on-one with Governor Gretchen Whitmer just days before the election. We turn the microphone over to you to ask your questions. We begin with kids and vaccines, and one Metro Detroit mom who wants to hear the governor assure her on this.
She's asking, this person is saying, will you repeat yourself very clearly, stating that you will not require the COVID vaccine for kids?
We're not going to mandate the COVID vaccine for kids.
No two ways about it.
I've said it the same over and over again.
James is asking, you declared recently that a governor can't fix global inflation. Did the public ask too much in expecting you to fix a global virus?
Well, I think, we were all confronting a virus that was wreaking havoc on different parts of the country and different times. Metropolitan Detroit hospitals were full in the early days. We had to move faster than other states did. We had lives on the line. Global inflation, we know that inflation is real all across the world. What we can do is try to keep more money in people's pockets, help them make more money, and that's precisely why the policies of eliminating the retirement tax or tripling the earned income tax credit, helping people with their cost of daycare, which we've delivered on. These are the things that we can do to help make life easier for people, and that's what I'll stay focused on.
President Biden hasn't been to Michigan he's kind of busy, but he's not stomping for you here. Do you think there's been a separation from the Whitmer camp and the Biden camp to kind of separate the inflation woes that they're feeling on that end to kind of the stuff that you're doing here on the ground?
No, I've stayed focused on doing what I need to do, running the state while also running for re-election. It's a lot. I'm grateful that there have been a number of people that have come in to help, like President Obama this past weekend. It was a great event. We had a lot of people were really excited about it. I think it's important to remind people this is a crucial election. Don't get mad, vote. We've got our democracy on the line. We've got fundamental rights on the line, public education, fixing the roads. We're making progress. We've got to continue doing this work. We cannot go backwards on any of these fronts.
One of our viewers is asking about the roads, specifically saying that they think that the roads are suddenly being fixed as the election gets closer. What do you say to that?
I understand the cynicism and all things politics these days, but the fact of the matter is we have done an incredible amount of work all across the state. 13,000 lane miles, 900 bridges. You don't just put orange barrels up in overnight. It takes engineering and planning and ramping up, which is what we've been doing for 3 3/4 years. We're starting to see the incredible work that's being done. Just remember, when you see those orange barrels, there are hardworking women and men on the side of the road. They're risking their lives, so please slow down.
Aaron is asking the question, why did you mandate school closings when it's clear that it would only damage children in the long run? This, of course, at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, so under my orders, schools were closed for 3 months, and then it largely went to the local districts to make decisions. We have to remember, we didn't know a lot about this virus in the early days. It was filling up our hospitals. Our morgues were full here in Southeast Michigan. We had refrigerated trucks outside of hospitals because there were so many dead people. We didn't have a place to put them. All right, so it's important to remember how dire and scary it was. Another aspect was, the last global pandemic was the 1918 flu. That disproportionately killed children. So as a mom and as governor, listening to the experts based on past, knowledge of global pandemics, the recommendation was to get the kids out of school. The thought of having a lot of children die because we didn't pull them out and when we didn't know a lot about this virus, that's what drove a lot of the work that we did to help make sure that we kept people alive. Studies show we saved thousands of lives, but the cost of being prudent and saving lives means that now we got to roll up our sleeves and give our kids all the supports they need to get back on track, and that's what this budget does, and that's why the work moving forward has to continue to be centered around that.
If you become governor again and something like this happened again, would you change anything about the number of months that you held kids back from school?
Well, Rup, that's an impossible question to answer. I mean, if we could go back in time with the knowledge we have now, would I have done some things differently? Sure, absolutely.
I mean, moving forward, though.
But
if this happens
moving
again,
forward,
if there's
with
an
the
RSV
same exact
or,
virus, do you know what I mean? Like, that's the question. We see RSV right now is kids are being hospitalized. This is spreading so fast. So if it was the exact same virus under the exact same circumstances, things would be different. Absolutely.
How would they be different, Governor?
We're about at time. I got to get her going.
Okay. Okay. Just last
Yeah,
answer.
no, I just, we would know that masks, we would have vaccines. I mean, so if this was a very similar virus, yeah, I think we would absolutely do things differently. If it was something that, like the 1918 flu, that disproportionately kills children, I would listen to our experts and work with our, leaders and stakeholders and try to make the best decisions I could. But everything we've done was focused on trying to save lives, and studies show we were very successful at doing that.
Governor, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Yep, thanks, Drew.
When we come back on Let It Rip, how likely will we see election results on election night? Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says the threat level is high when it comes to people wanting to disrupt the election. But her office and poll watchers on both sides of the aisle are vowing to get it right. One-on-one with Oakland County Election Clerk Lisa Brown as this election special of Let It Rip continues.
Welcome back to Let It Rip. We want to thank our friends at Leon and Lulu and Clausen for letting us set up our interview with Governor Whitmer there. She was on a campaign stop. And listen, we want to make sure that you realize we gave both Tudor Dixon and Governor Whitmer a chance to talk to us for 25 minutes apiece. And as you saw there, the governor's team was able to carve out that 16-minute interview for us. And so we hope you got what you needed out of that. Joining us now is someone that we hope you get something out of as well, Lisa Brown, the Oakland County Clerk, of course, for the elections. And so much is going on with this election cycle. Charlie Langton here to break it down with us as well. The concern here is that when the results come in, as you watch election night coverage here on Fox 2, that you're not going to get the results necessarily right away as quickly as you'd like. What does that really mean? Lisa joins us now with a look. Lisa, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
What should we expect for everyone watching at home when it comes to election night and the results usually start pouring in and we say, hey, we think we have a winner here? That may not be the case this time. Why?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why. First of all, we do have pre-processing for some of our communities for their absentee ballots. What impact that will have, we do not know. But most of our counties in Michigan can no longer modem in their results. Some of us can. One vendor had federally certified 4G modem, so we can still do that, but most counties can't. So getting those results is going to take a longer time. Macomb is having everybody drive in. Every county is doing something different. Absentee ballots do take longer to process. There's a lot of steps that go in to make sure that that vote should be counted when it's returned. So if people haven't returned their absentee ballots yet, please do not wait to the last minute. Do not put it in the mail at this point. You need to put it in either a drop box in your community, if your community has one, or just take it into your city or township clerk's office. But so it takes a long time to do that. I will say for the communities that we tabulate for in Oakland County, so this election will be tabulating for 18 of our communities. We can only tabulate the ballots that they get until 4 p.m. on Monday. Any absentee ballots that they get after that have to be tabulated in the precincts. And remember, you have until 8 p.m. on Election Day to return your absentee ballot. So our local clerks have to wait until 8 p.m. to make sure that no more absentee ballots come in. If they do, they then have to take the time to check them in, right? Check the signature, do all the steps that they do with every other absentee ballot, and then drive them out to the appropriate precinct and then tabulate them.
Takes time.
So that takes time as well,
I'm
yes.
hearing a bunch of numbers that a lot of people are going to be voting absentee. Do you have any idea how many absentee voting will actually take place? I know you sent out a lot of absentee ballots.
Well, I haven't. Our city and township clerks send them out.
Yeah.
But in Oakland County, we about a little over 300,000 absentee ballots have been sent out, and 66% of those have come back.
Is that more or less than usual?
I think it's a little bit less. I think, you know, and as far as the return rate, again, that's what I'm saying. If people haven't returned it yet, please return it.
But that's close to about 40–50% absentee voting, isn't it?
That's about a third of our electorate in Oakland County.
That's a lot, isn't it?
I mean, how do you say what?
Let me ask you this. One of the issues on the ballot is Proposal 2, which, if passed, would allow 9 days of in-person voting. And I'm not going to say which way you're leaning toward that, but what would that do to your office, where you could go into your office or the clerk's office in any township or municipality and vote? What would that do?
Well, we've already said if that passes, we would be a location that people could vote in Oakland County. But I don't think it's so much about what it would do to my office. I think it's more about what that does for a voter.
Is that good or bad?
And well, I think it depends on the voter and their opinion, right? But the big distinction that I try and tell people is, you know, with absentee voting, if you're voting in a race that says vote for no more than 2, okay? Pick whichever one. We have a number of those on the ballot. But you voted for 3. That is now, first, in the absentee voting counting board, a Democrat and Republican are going to look at that ballot together and see, is it really 3? Or was it a pen rest? Because our equipment is sensitive, right? So, but let's say it is 3. They agree, nope, they filled in 3. Now your vote doesn't count in that race.
Well, that's why it's so important for people who are filling out these absentees to do it the right way, because there's no one there at the office to say, hey, wait a minute here, you did this incorrectly, you got to redo it. Let me ask you this about the integrity of this election.
Okay. Can I finish on the
sure,
early voting?
Absolutely.
No? Sorry.
Sure.
So in comparison to early voting, though, you're going into the clerk's office, you're actually putting your ballot in the tabulator, so it's going to spit it back out to you to say you overvoted in this race, and you will have the opportunity to correct that.
Gotcha.
So, you know, no tabulation would be public or anything like that, but you're putting in the tabulator, so you'd be able to correct any errors. Sorry.
No,
I just wanted to.
Very important distinction to finish up that answer, and we only have a quick minute or 2 left here, so I wanted to ask you, for those doubters out there are people who automatically want to say that this election, if it doesn't go the way in which they voted, is somehow compromised. And, you know, Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, has said, you know, I think the threat level, she says, is an 8 in Michigan right now. What does that mean for you as a clerk? What do you do with that moving forward as you head towards the election? Well, you know, we've never had any major problems, and I would hope that this election would run smoothly, just like every other one. Yes, there's a lot of hype out there. We have alerted our law enforcement and our local clerks, and they've told their workers what election day crimes are, that there are felonies and misdemeanors out there, and that they will be treated as such. You know, we had a candidate out there who was encouraging people to unplug tabulators if they didn't like what they saw. That's a felony, and so we want everyone to know that is a felony. It will be treated as such. What are some other crimes that people don't even know they're committing when they go out there trying to influence intimidating voters, obviously, is a big one, and that's a concern from what we're hearing, the hype that's out there. But, you know, just be respectful as you always have been. But our process is so transparent. There's so many ways that people can either be involved by either working an election or just observing. We just had our public accuracy test. People came and watch that. After the election, they can come to the canvas at the county and watch that. I mean, there's just... Sorry.
No, you're doing your own.
We got 1 minute left. We got 1 minute left.
Here it is. Polls close at 8. When are we going to get the full results, including the absentees? What time?
You know,
and I'm going to hold you to it.
I'm not going to say that.
Yeah,
I will say for the 18 communities that will be tabulating, you'll get those real close to 8 p.m.
Yeah, because it's Oakland County, and you're talking about the modem situation that a lot of people.
Well, and
know,
we're
right?
counting those.
And you're
so
counting those,
we you know, in 2020, November of 2020, we tabulated over 144,000 ballots. We had those results up by 9 p.m.
Did you pack an overnight bag? That's all I want to know.
So
That's all I want to know.
You have a change of clothes. It's going to be a long night next Tuesday. Lisa
Breakfast.
Brown, we thank you so much for your time today. Of course, talking about the elections in Oakland County, we have various counties throughout our area. Stay tuned to Fox 2. This is the place to get your latest election coverage, both streaming on fox2detroit.com from 7 to 10. We have a special Let It Rip that's airing. We look forward to that, and also on television starting at 10 on election night, and of course leading up to that all throughout the day. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Let It Rip.